All right, let's dive right into this complete 2026 guide to Microsoft Azure. Today, we're going to make sense of this massive ecosystem by framing it like we're constructing a giant digital skyscraper. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a comprehensive overview of Azure, covering its core architecture, compute and storage services, networking, security, and the absolute best practices for deployment. We're mapping out exactly how it all connects, literally from the concrete foundation all the way up to the penthouse security systems.
Because look, let's be honest here. Looking at Azure for the first time can be completely overwhelming. We're talking over 200 distinct services spread out across more than 60 global regions. To put that massive scale into perspective for a second, that is enough physical infrastructure and fiber optic cable to wrap around the Earth multiple times over. They offer infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and even hybrid capabilities with Azure Arc. Without a solid blueprint, all of this can just feel like a confusing bowl of service soup. But, it really doesn't have to be.
So, to tame that complexity, we're going to logically build our cloud architecture layer by layer through these 5 essential sections. The core foundation, compute and storage, networking, identity and security, and deployment best practices. Okay, starting off with section 1, the core foundation. Because obviously, you can't build a stable skyscraper on a messy plot of land. Azure actually utilizes a brilliant top-down management hierarchy, and this is how you organize your entire environment. At the very top, you've got management groups, which cascade your policies and compliance rules right down into your subscriptions. Inside those subscriptions, you have resource groups. Think of these as logical containers for your lifecycle and billing boundaries. And then finally, inside those groups, you have the actual resources themselves, like your virtual machines or your storage accounts. This structure ensures that your access, policy, and billing rules flow perfectly from the very top right down to an individual database.
Now, who actually builds these resources? Well, that would be the Azure Resource Manager, or ARM for short. Think of ARM as your highly automated construction crew. Instead of manually clicking around a web portal, you just hand ARM a blueprint written in code, specifically JSON or Bicep templates, and ARM takes that template and actually builds the environment out for you, consistently, every single time.
Moving on to section 2, compute and storage. Our foundation's poured, so now it's time to actually build the floors and rooms of our skyscraper.
The crucial decision here is choosing the right type of building material. You're generally deciding between infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, and platform as a service, PaaS. With IaaS, like an Azure virtual machine, you get complete granular control. There are over 700 VM sizes available right now, ranging from general compute to crazy memory-optimized and GPU-heavy machines. But you still have to manage the operating system yourself. On the flip side, PaaS offerings like App Service or Azure Functions, they give you managed efficiency. You literally just bring your code, .NET, Java, Python, whatever, and Azure fully handles the servers, the auto-scaling, and the event-driven executions completely behind the scenes.
When you're looking at the major services, you simply have to match the tool to the job. Got a ton of unstructured data? Use Blob storage. Need a managed relational database? Azure SQL DB is your friend. But if you're building a globally distributed app that strictly requires sub-10 millisecond latency, you're going to want to grab Cosmos DB. It's a multi-model NoSQL powerhouse, and it boasts an incredible 99.999% service level agreement.
Let's look at how this builds into actual real-world patterns. A super classic architectural pattern in Azure is pairing blob storage with a content delivery network. That gives you ultra-fast, incredibly cheap static websites. Or if you're building a multi-tenant SaaS product, utilizing a SQL Elastic Pool allows you to share database resources super efficiently across all your customers, which drastically reduces your monthly costs.
But wait, what happens if something actually breaks? Well, this is exactly where Azure's massive scale shines. By leveraging availability zones, which are physically separate data centers within a single region, complete with their own independent power, cooling, and networking, services like virtual machines and SQL databases achieve a highly reliable 99.99% SLA. Basically, your application stays online even if an entire data center goes dark, which totally saves you from that dreaded 3 a.m. panic attack.
All right, section 3, networking. We've got our buildings, but how do they talk to each other? Let's lay down the plumbing and the roads for our cloud city.
The absolute core of your isolation is the virtual network, or VNet. When you deploy a VNet, you are basically carving out your very own private, isolated network right in the cloud. It completely protects your internal resources from the public internet. From there, you can carve it up further using subnets, carefully define exactly how traffic flows using route tables, and then act as a strict bouncer for each subnet using network security groups.
Once that private network is all set up, Azure provides specific traffic directors depending on exactly what you need. A standard load balancer is going to handle your basic Layer 4 network routing. But if you need smarter web traffic routing with a built-in firewall, you step up to the Layer 7 application gateway. For massive global applications, Azure Front Door acts as a worldwide CDN and firewall combined into one. And finally, Private Link allows your virtual network to securely access PaaS services without that data ever traversing the public internet.
Section 4. Identity and Security. The roads are built, traffic is flowing, so now we desperately need a robust security system to control exactly who gets into our building. And this whole process starts with Microsoft Entra ID, which you might know by its former name, Azure Active Directory. Entra ID is essentially the front door security guard for your entire Azure environment. It acts as the core identity provider, completely managing single sign-on, enforcing multi-factor authentication, and utilizing conditional access to make sure only the right users on trusted devices actually gain entry.
But beyond just user identity, Azure hooks you up with a deeply integrated security arsenal. Role-based access control ensures your users only have the permissions they strictly need, no more, no less. Then, Key Vault acts as your uncrackable digital safe, securely locking away your certificates and application secrets using actual hardware security modules. And to actively monitor for threats, you deploy Microsoft Defender for Cloud to assess your overall security posture, while Microsoft Sentinel acts as your 24/7 CCTV and security response team, providing intelligent threat analytics and automated incident response.
Finally, Section 5. Deployment Best Practices. It's time to look at the operational blueprints and the golden rules for actually managing this incredible digital property over time.
Microsoft provides a serious guiding light here, and it's called the Well-Architected Framework. Truly, every single architectural decision you make should be heavily evaluated against these 5 fundamental pillars: cost optimization, operational excellence, performance efficiency, reliability, and security. If a design choice you're making compromises even one of these pillars without a really good reason, honestly, it's time to go back to the drawing board.
To ensure you're actually hitting those 5 pillars, this 2026 guide outlines several crucial architectural best practices. You should always use resource groups and tags so you know exactly who owns what and exactly where your money is going. Use Azure Advisor to right-size your resources. Seriously, don't pay for a massive VM if a tiny one will get the job done. Enable auto shutdown for your development VMs so you aren't literally burning cash over the weekend. Always use infrastructure as code, and please, enable cost alerts before you get a nasty surprise bill at the end of the month.
Now, on the security side, these are the absolute non-negotiable best practices. You must enable multi-factor authentication and conditional access, period. You should ensure Defender is turned on, and you really need to rely on private endpoints for secure communication. But actually, perhaps the most important takeaway on this slide is to use managed identities instead of connection strings and keys. Passing vulnerable access keys around in your source code is a massive security risk. Managed identities allow your Azure resources to authenticate with each other automatically and completely securely.
And when it finally comes time to build, Bicep is your absolute go-to infrastructure as code language. As you can see here, it's clean, it's declarative, and it lets you deploy exactly what we've discussed today consistently every single time. It just completely eliminates the human error of manually clicking through endless web menus.
So, how do you actually get started? Well, here is your actionable first project path. You want to logically move from the outside in. First, create your resource group container to hold everything together. Next, lay down your virtual network plumbing before spinning up your compute layer to sit securely on top of it. Once your app is up and running, attach your data layer, protect the entire stack with Azure Monitor and Backup, and finally, set up your CI/CD pipelines to fully automate your code deployments.
And there it is. You now understand the core foundation, the compute and storage buildings, the networking plumbing, the security perimeters, and the operational best practices of this entire massive Azure ecosystem. You quite literally have the ultimate 2026 blueprint in your hands right now. So the only question left for you is, what are you going to build first?